nearly lost control of the car that night, and if I had been even half a second slower, we would have hit her. This was about 6 or 7 years ago, back when I was still with my ex, Duda. We'd gone out for New Year's Eve. Nothing crazy, just a house party at one of her friends' places, but we ended up staying way later than we planned. By the time we left, it was well past midnight, and I was exhausted. Driving on New Year's Eve is already a bad idea, and I knew that, but we didn't have a choice. There was nowhere for us to stay, and the drive back was about half an hour, through roads that were already icing over. It had snowed earlier that day, and everything had that thin, slick layer you don't really notice until it's too late. The streets were mostly empty, which I remember being thankful for, because the last thing I wanted was to deal with other drivers on top of everything else. Duda was half asleep in the passenger seat. The heat was blasting, and I had music on just to keep myself alert. It was one of those drives where you're not really thinking, just focused on getting home. We were about 10 minutes away when it happened. 1 second, the road ahead was completely clear, and the next there was someone standing right in the middle of it. She wasn't crossing. She wasn't moving. She was just there, facing directly toward the car like she'd been waiting. I didn't have time to think. I hit the brakes as hard as I could, and at the same time, I realized she was holding something. A knife. It was down by her side, but it was big, the kind you'd use in a kitchen, long enough that even from inside the car, I could see the blade catching the headlights. I yanked the wheel to the right to avoid hitting her, and the second I did, she moved. Not away from the car, toward it. She lunged forward as we passed, and I heard the impact, a sharp metallic crack that cut through everything else. At the same time, the car lost traction. The tires slipped instantly, like there was nothing underneath them, and the next thing I knew we were spinning. Duda woke up screaming, grabbing onto the dashboard, and I was trying to correct the steering, but there was nothing to correct. The car wasn't responding anymore. We spun all the way around and came to a stop facing back the way we'd come. For a second, everything went quiet. Then I looked up. She was still there, maybe 30 feet away, standing in the road, still holding the knife, lit up completely by the headlights. But now she was moving. She was limping toward us, dragging one leg slightly, like she'd hurt herself when she hit the car. But she wasn't slowing down. If anything, she was trying to move faster. Her face, I don't even know how to describe it properly. It looked like she was crying and screaming at the same time, but there was no control in it. It didn't look human in the way you expect. It looked wrong, like something had broken. Duda was shouting at me to go, to do something. But I just sat there for a second, completely locked in place, watching this woman getting closer. She was maybe 15 feet away when I snapped out of it. I threw the car into drive and hit the accelerator. The tires spun again, just for a second, and that second felt like forever. But then they caught, and the car lurched forward. I thought we were past her. I thought that was it. But I was wrong. She moved faster than I expected, and before I even had time to react, she was on the car. She hit the hood hard enough to make the whole thing shake, and suddenly, she was right there in front of us, clinging on with one hand and stabbing at the windshield with the other, over and over again. The sound of the knife hitting the glass was sharp and loud, each strike leaving marks that spread out across the surface like cracks waiting to form. Duda was screaming beside me, and I couldn't see properly anymore. Her face was right there, inches from the glass, her eyes locked on mine, completely fixed, like she wasn't even blinking. I didn't think. I just started swerving. Hard. Back and forth. Forcing the car side to side, trying to throw her off. She slid across the hood but kept her grip, still stabbing, still trying to get through. On the third or fourth swerve, she lost it. I saw her slip, her hand sliding off the edge, and then she was gone. I checked the mirror just in time to see her hit the road and roll, her body folding in a way that didn't look right before she came to a stop near the shoulder. For a second, I almost stopped. I thought I'd killed her. That maybe she'd just been some person having a breakdown, and I'd just left her there. But Duda grabbed my arm and told me to keep driving, and this time, I listened. We didn't slow down again. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive. When we got back, I sat in the car for a while, before going inside, just staring at the windshield, at the marks the knife had left behind. The next day, I checked the news. Nothing. No reports. No accidents. No missing person. Nothing at all. I went back to that road a few days later during the day, just to see if there was any sign of what happened. There wasn't. No blood. No skid marks. No broken glass. Nothing. The road looked exactly the same as it always did. But the thing that stayed with me the most isn't what happened that night. It's something I noticed later. When I was getting the car repaired, the guy asked me what had caused the damage. I told him I hit something. He looked at the marks for a second, then said something I didn't expect. He said the scratches weren't from the outside. He said they looked like they'd been made from inside the glass. I know how this sounds, and I've tried to explain it a dozen different ways, but no matter how I look at it, there's no version of this that makes sense. This happened last New Year's Eve, and it's the only time in my life where I've genuinely questioned whether something impossible actually happened to me. At the time, I was living in New York, and one of my closest friends, Garrett, was living in Hong Kong. We met at university, stayed close after, and even though we were on opposite sides of the world, we spoke pretty regularly. New Year's Eve just happened to line up in a weird way because of the time difference. When it hits midnight in Hong Kong, it's still late morning in New York, so we both ended up going out, just at completely different times. I went out that night with two friends, nothing unusual. Drinks at an apartment first. Then we moved to a rooftop party in Williamsburg. It was busy, loud, a lot of people I didn't know, but it had a good atmosphere. Around 11:30, I ended up at the bar on my own for a minute, and that's when I noticed her. She was standing slightly off to the side, not really talking to anyone, just watching the room in a way that didn't match the energy around her. Everyone else was loud, moving, celebrating, and she just looked calm, not shy, not awkward, just separate from it. I went over and started talking to her, and straight away it felt easy. No effort, no awkwardness, just one of those conversations that flows naturally, like you've known the person longer than you have. Her name was Maitra. She had to repeat it because I hadn't heard it before, and she laughed when I got it wrong the first time, then wrote it on my hand with a pen so I wouldn't forget. That's something I remember clearly. The rest of the night moved fast. We talked, we danced, we kissed when midnight hit, and by about 12:30 she suggested we leave. So we did. We got a car back to my place, and everything about it felt normal. Nothing rushed, nothing strange, just a good night with someone I'd connected with. We stayed up for a while after, just talking, and this is the part that stuck with me. She told me things about herself, small details that you wouldn't bother making up. She said she was originally from San Diego, that she was a painter now, but used to do graffiti. that her birthday was April 28th, and that she had 2 cats. One of them was called Mia, the other was Cosmo. I remember that specifically because I made a joke about Cosmo sounding like a dog's name, and she laughed. At some point, she said her clothes smelled like the bar, so I put them in the wash for her, and she borrowed one of my t-shirts. We fell asleep not long after that. When I woke up the next morning, she was gone. At first, I didn't think much of it. People leave early sometimes, it happens. But then I noticed something that didn't add up. My front door was still locked, and not just closed, properly locked. The kind of lock that can't be set from the outside without a key. I stood there for a second trying to work it out, thinking maybe I'd locked it after she left. But I knew I hadn't. I would have remembered doing that. I checked the rest of the apartment, even though I knew it made no sense. There was nowhere for her to be. No second exit, no open windows, nothing. Her clothes were gone from the dryer. The t-shirt I'd lent her was gone too. She had been there. But she wasn't anymore. And there was no way she could have left. I spent most of that day trying to make sense of it, replaying everything in my head, going over the details, trying to convince myself I'd just forgotten something obvious. But there wasn't anything. Later that afternoon, I called Garrett. I didn't have a reason. Not really. It just felt like something I needed to do. We started talking about our nights, what we'd done, who we'd met, and he mentioned he'd met a girl as well. Said they'd hit it off, gone back to his place, and she'd left in the morning without saying anything. I laughed and told him the exact same thing had happened to me. Same situation, same timing. Then he told me her name, Mitra. I didn't say anything straight away. I just asked him to describe her, and as he did, every detail lined up. San Diego, painter, used to do graffiti, birthday April 28th, 2 cats, Mia and Cosmo. I cut him off at that point because I already knew. I asked if he had any pictures. He said he did. When he sent them through, it was the same girl, exactly the same. There was no question about it. Same face, same clothes, same everything. We tried to explain it. We went through every possibility, every explanation we could think of. But nothing worked, because the timing didn't make sense. He met her at around 11 at night in Hong Kong. I met her at around 11:30 at night in New York. Even ignoring everything else, the distance alone made it impossible. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't any way she could have been in both places. We both tried to find her after, looked online, searched the name, tried to track anything down. There was nothing, no social media, no mention, no trace at all. The thing that bothers me the most isn't that I can't explain it. It's how normal it felt at the time. There was nothing strange about her, nothing that made me question it while it was happening. It was only after, when everything didn't line up, that it became something else entirely. New Year's Eve is coming up again soon. Garrett and I still talk about it sometimes. Not often. Just enough to remind each other. It actually happened. And every time it does, we come to the same conclusion. We didn't meet someone that night. We experienced something, and whatever it was, it knew exactly how to make itself seem real. My dad doesn't scare easily, but every time he tells this story, there's a point where he just stops talking for a second, like he's still trying to work out what he saw. This happened years before I was born, back when my parents used to travel a lot and had a place up in Vermont. It was one of those lodges out in the middle of nowhere, set right on the edge of a lake, surrounded by forest on all sides. In winter, the whole place would freeze over completely. The lake turned into a solid sheet of ice. The trees were buried under snow, and at night it got so quiet it almost felt unnatural. That New Year's Eve, it was just my dad and his friend Victor staying there. The weather had been perfect all day, cold but clear, and by the evening it had started snowing lightly, just enough to soften everything without blocking visibility. They'd gone upstairs, opened a couple of beers, and were sitting by the full-length windows that looked out across the lake. From up there, you could see everything, the entire frozen surface stretching out into the darkness, with nothing on the other side but trees. They had the radio on, waiting for the countdown from Times Square, just talking, relaxing, not really paying attention to the time. And then the light hit. My dad said it wasn't like fireworks. It didn't come from above, and it didn't spread across the sky. It came from the lake itself, a sudden, blinding flash that lit the entire surface from below, like something underneath the ice had just ignited for a split second. No sound, just light. Victor stood up straight away and moved toward the window, trying to see what it was. My dad followed, both of them staring out across the lake, waiting for it to happen again. At first, there was nothing. Then Victor said he saw movement, far side of the lake, something small. My dad told him it was probably nothing, just the way the light had hit the snow, but Victor was already convinced. He said there was someone out there, a person. My dad pushed back on that immediately, because it didn't make sense. There were no houses on that side, no roads, no reason for anyone to be out there in the middle of the night. But Victor wasn't listening. He started putting his boots on, grabbing his coat, saying he was going to check. My dad told him to leave it, that it wasn't worth it, but Victor was already heading downstairs, so my dad followed him. They stepped out onto the back deck, and the cold hit straight away, sharp and heavy, the kind that takes your breath for a second. That's when they heard it, a voice, faint at first but clear enough, a child, somewhere out on the lake, calling for help, over and over again, not loud, not panicked in the way you'd expect, just steady, repeating the same word like it was being said without thinking. My dad said they didn't even hesitate. They stepped out onto the ice and started moving toward it. The surface held solid under their feet. No cracks, no warning signs. Just that flat, frozen stretch, leading out into the dark. As they got closer, they could make out a figure, small, standing still, about 20 or 30 yards from the far edge. It looked like a kid. The shape was right, the height, the way it stood. But something about it didn't match the situation. It wasn't moving properly. It wasn't reacting to them getting closer. It was just there. Then the light hit again, stronger this time. So bright, my dad said he had to drop his head and shield his eyes, like looking directly at it would have burned. For a second, everything disappeared. Just white. Then it was gone, and so was the kid. They both stopped where they were, just staring at the spot where it had been. Nothing there. No movement. No footprints. No sign anything had ever been standing on the ice at all. That's when the situation changed. It stopped being curiosity. It became something else. My dad said he felt it straight away. That instinct that tells you you've made a mistake. Victor said they should go back. Neither of them argued. They turned and started walking toward the house again. Faster this time, not running, but close to it. About halfway back, Victor suddenly stopped and grabbed my dad's arm. He pointed toward the house, up at the window they'd just been standing in, and he said there was someone inside, a kid, standing right there, looking out at them. My dad looked, but he didn't see anything, just the reflection of the snow, The dark glass. Nothing else. Victor was adamant, said he saw it clearly, said it was watching them. They didn't wait to figure it out. They got back inside as fast as they could and locked the doors, checked every room, every window, every corner of the place. There was no one there, nothing out of place, no sign anyone had been inside at all. They didn't go back upstairs that night, didn't turn the lights off, didn't even bother with the countdown. They just sat there in silence, listening to the house. My dad said he woke up twice during the night, both times to the same thing. Not footsteps, not movement, just the sound of something shifting somewhere above him, slow, deliberate, like weight being placed carefully across the floor. But when he went to check in the morning, there was nothing there. No marks, no tracks, nothing. They left later that day, cut the trip short, and they never went back to that lodge again. I asked him once what he thought it was, whether he thought it was something in the lake or something that had been in the house. He didn't answer straight away. He just sat there for a second, then said something I've never really been able to forget. He said the thing on the ice wasn't calling for help. It was trying to get them to come out there, and whatever caused that light was making sure they couldn't see what was really standing in front of them.